Okay, so the in this section right here in this worksheet, section 6.2, part A, I wanted you to do this using the method from that section. I do not want you using the AC method, which is in section 6.4. I need you to use the method that's described in this section. So in other words, if you looked at the videos, you would have seen what I wanted you to do. Again, you should always look at the videos. So number one, you have 4x squared. Right here. You have 4x squared plus 12x plus 5. All right. And so, again, always look for the GCF other than 1. So the GCF here is 1. So we're going to go directly to two binomials. Okay. And then we're going to use the idea of FOIL. So that's what I'm talking about when I say make sure you're using reverse FOIL. So we're going to use the idea of FOIL. So remember, when you multiply two binomials, first times first gives us this term here. All right, and then last times last gives us a positive 5, and then the outer and the inner will give us this middle term. Okay? All right, so let's start thinking about two factors of 4x squared. So give me two things whose product is 4x squared. So for 4x squared, there's several possibilities. You could say 2x times 2x. You could say 4x times just x. Okay? So for us, let's just try 2x times 2x. All right, 2x times 2x. It doesn't always work, but sometimes you may want to try. See these coefficients too? They're the exact same coefficient, but you want to try numbers that are closer together on the number line. So 1 and 4 on the number line are further away from each other than 2 and 2. See, 2 and 2 are here, 1 and 4 are further away. So try this first. It doesn't always work, but let's just try it. So we're going to say 2x, 2x. Now, the method that they're using in this section as well, if you look at the video, or if you bought the book, if you look at the notes, the textbook, it's also called trial and error. All right. So in other words, if you try something, it doesn't work, try something else. You get an error, try something else. All right. Now, so always do the F first. So we're going to do 2x times 2x first. Now, always go to the L second. So you do this first, and then you go to this second, the L. So give me two things whose two factors of 5. So give me two numbers whose product is a positive 5 now. All right. Now, keep in mind that the last sign's positive. That's the easy kind in terms of signs. If the last sign's positive, that means that these signs in here have to be the same. Either they're both positive because a positive times a positive is a positive, or they're both negative because a negative times a negative is a positive. But look at your middle sign. Your middle sign's positive. So remember, you get to middle from the opposite, from the outside and the inside. So in order to get a positive, both of these have to be positive. So that means that these signs in here have to be both positive. So in other words, the operation has to be a plus and a plus. And the only possibility for 5, is 5 times 1. So let's put the 5 here, the 1 there, and see what happens. All right. So our L so far is okay. Now all I got to do now is check the outer and the inner. The outer is 2x. 2x times positive 1 is 2x. The inner is 10x. Positive 5 times 2x is 10x. And when I add them up, I do get 12x, which is what I wanted. So this is your answer. So on the blank, right here, on the blank, you're going to put 2x plus 5 times 2x plus 1. Now, when I said this, now look what I'm saying. I just wanted you to make sure that you're checking yourself. So where it says in 1 through 4, I just need you to do it in 1 through 4. I need you to check your answer using FOIL. So to check your answer, you'll do 2x times 2x is 4x squared. The outer, you're going to say plus 2x. The inner, plus 10x. And the last, plus 5. And they combine like terms, and this is your check. Combine like terms, you're going to say 4x squared plus 12x plus 5, and that's what you wanted. Okay, so that's what I mean by checking the answer. Okay, let's go to number 2. Okay, number 2, you have 3. Number 2, you have 3p squared minus 2p minus 5. So 3p squared minus 2p minus 5. Again, the GCF is 1. So I'm going to go directly to the two binomials. And again, we're going to use FOIL and then trial and error. Okay? It just turned out that the ones we used here did work fine. We didn't have to cross it out and do something else. So here we may have to. We may make a mistake, and if it doesn't work, we'll remove it and then try something else. Okay? All right, now, always go to the F first in terms of FOIL. First times first has to be 3p squared. There's only one possibility for 3p squared. There's only one. It's 3p times p. That's all you get. So let's put the 3p here and the p there. And it doesn't matter. You could have put the p here, the 3p there. It did not matter. All right, now, you see how this was a positive 5, and we talked about the signs are the same, because a positive times a positive is a positive. All right, and we knew that these had to be the both pluses, both operations of addition, because I needed the out and the inner to be a positive 12x. Here, though, it's a negative. So if you look at your last, remember, always go to last next. If you look at your last, a positive times a negative is a negative, or a negative times a positive is a negative. Okay? So one has to be positive, the other one has to be negative. Now, the way I would do that is this. I would just go ahead and I know the last sign's negative 5. I know it's negative 5. The last sign's negative 5, not 5, but negative 5. But when we try and put numbers in here, let's just look at the absolute value first. So the absolute value of a negative 5 is 5. All right, so let's just write that down. And then if you look at this, the only possibility of two numbers whose product is 5 times 1. Okay, so let's put the 5 here, put 1 there, and see what happens. If it doesn't work, we'll switch them. That's what that trial and error is about. Okay, now let's talk about the sign. All right, now remember, one's positive, one's negative, so here's what we're going to do. Before we put in the signs, let's just make sure that these terms are in the right order. Okay, so my outer is going to be 3p. My inner is going to be 5p. Okay, all right, now listen to what I'm about to say. So remember, we talked about the fact that the last is negative. All right, so that means one's positive, one's negative. So that means that 5p is either positive or 5p is negative. All right, now remember, when you add, you're adding these up. All right, so you're adding these up. One's positive, one's negative, but I want the sum, whenever I add them up, the out and the in, I want the sum to be negative. All right, so in order for the sum to be negative, that means that the larger coefficient here, right here, has to be negative. So that means that 5p has to be negative and 3p has to be positive. All right, and when I do add them up, I do get negative 2p, so I'm fine. This is the correct order. See, I got negative 2p. This is the correct order. All I've got to do is put the correct signs in its place. All right, so let's think about that. I want my outer to be a positive 3p. In order for my outer to be a positive 3p, positive, see, that's positive right here. In order for that to be a positive 3p, that means that this has to be a plus symbol. Over here, I want my inner to be a negative 5p. In order for that to happen, this right here has to be a negative operation. All right, and then you're done. That's your answer. All right, so number 2, you're going to get 3p minus 5 times p plus 1. And again, remember I said for 1 through 4, check your answer using FOIL. So let's just check it. 3p times p is 3p squared. The outer, 3p times 1 is a positive 3p. The inner, a negative 5 times p is a negative 5p. And the last, a negative 5 times a positive 1 is a negative 5. And when I combine my like terms, I get 3p squared minus 2p minus 5, which is what you wanted. So this is your answer. All right, so that's number 2. Okay, number 3. All right, number 3, you have 4x squared minus 35x plus 24. So 4x squared minus 25x plus 24. All right, so the GCF again is 1. So I'm going to go directly to two binomials and see what happens. Okay, we can use either your FOIL now. Okay, so again, we have 4x squared. So what times what's 4x squared? Again, remember the possibilities for 4x squared are 2x times 2x, 2x times 2x, or 4x times x. All right, let's just try 2x times 2x and see what happens. Let's do that again. So 2x times 2x. If it doesn't work, we may have to use 4x and x. That's trial and error. All right, now the last sign, see the last sign is positive. So right away, that's going to be the easy kind because these signs in here have to be the same. And we know from our discussion earlier that if I want the outer and the inner to be negative, that means that the operation has to be a subtraction symbol. All right, now let's talk about 24. There are several possibilities for 24. There's 2 times 12. There's 4 times 6. There is 8 times 3. And then 24 times 1. Okay, so 2 times 12, 4 times 6, 8 times 3, 24 times 1. Now, think about this for a moment. If you say, well, I'm going to use 4 and 6, that's if you keep it as 2x and 2x, that's not going to work. Because let's think about it. If you do 4 and 6 and you put the 4 here and the 6 there, I want you to think. Look at the GCF of this binomial. The GCF of this binomial right here is 2. So that means you could take out a 2. So if I could take out a 2, that means I can take out a 2 from this whole thing right here, and I can't because of that 35. Same thing here. I can take out a 2. So um, uh, if I keep it 2x and 2x, then I can't use this. Okay? So that's not going to work. So if you want to keep the 2x and 2x until you exhaust every possibility, then let's go to the next one. Let's try. So you see how these are both evens right here, 2x and 2x, a coefficient? Then I wouldn't use a 2 and a 12. So let's just try the 8 and the 3 first. Now again, remember they're both negative. I can't use the 8 here for the same reason. You got to be strategic. If I use the 8 here, then that means I can factor out a 2 here. If I factor out a 2, 2 times x minus 4, if I factor out a 2 from here, that means I can factor out a 2 from the beginning, and I can't because the GCF here was 1. So that wouldn't work. So that means maybe that I'm going to remember they're both negative right here. So I would put the 8 here and the 3 there. But again, that doesn't work again because look, I could take out a 2. So that wouldn't work either. So that tells me then, you see how I did all this? And I exhausted some possibilities here. That tells me then, well, maybe instead of using 2x and 2x, that I may want to use 4x and x. Okay, so let's do that. Let's just use 4x and x and see what happens. All right, 4x and x. All right, and it didn't matter. You could say x and 4x does not matter. But notice what you're doing, trial and error. And you're using FOIL that you learned last semester. All right, so 4x and x, and again, if I'm going to use 4x and x, then this won't work. Make sure you understand why 4 and 6 and 2 and 12 will not work if I use 4x and x, because they're both even. So if I put 2 here or 12 here, if I put 2 here, see how I'm notating it, then I could take out a 2. If I put 12 here, I could take out a 4, which means I could take out a 2 or 4 here. So that won't work. So then well, except for the 24 and the 1, but the other possibility is to use 8 and 3. But don't put the 8 here for the same reason. If you put the 8 here for the same reason, is that I can take out a 4, which meant I can take out a 4 from the beginning, but negative 39 is not divisible by 4. So that means then, I remember they're both negative, that means then let's put the 8 here and the 3 there. Okay, now check your work. Go back to here. So f, 4x times x is 4x squared. So far we're okay with the f. The outer, let's go to the last. A negative 3 times a negative 8 is a positive 24, and that's what I wanted. So the L is okay. Now let's do the outer and the inner. The outer is a negative 32x. The inner is a negative 3x, and voila, when I add them up, I get a negative 35x, which is what I wanted. So there's your answer. So in the blank, you're going to put, okay, so in the blank here, you're going to put 4x minus 3 times x minus 8. And again, make sure 1 through 4, I want you to do this 1 through 4 only. Check your work. 4x times x is 4x squared. The outer, positive 4x times a negative 8 is a negative 32x. The inner, a negative 3 times x is a negative 3x. And the last, a negative 3 times a negative 8 is a positive 24. Combined like terms, I get 4x squared minus 35x plus 24, which is what you wanted. Okay, so it's number 3. All right, so then number 4, we have this for number 4 then. Okay, number 4, we have 4m squared minus 4m minus 63. So 4m squared minus 4m minus 63. Okay, so the GCF here is 1. GCF is 1, so I'm going directly to 2 binomials. Again, I have 4m, so you may want to try 2m and m again if you want to. If you want to try that. Let's see what happens. All right, now here we go with the negative. See that sign? Last sign's negative. One's positive, one's negative. Okay? All right, now let's talk about 63 for a moment. 63. There are several possibilities. There's 3 times 21. Use your calculator if you need to. There is 7 times, let's see, 63 divided by 7. 9. There is, let's see, 63 times 1, which obviously we probably won't use because that's a big number right here, 63. Let's try, for right now, let's just try the 7 and 9 and see what happens. Let's try 7 and 9. So since these are both the same first terms, it really does not matter where you put the 7 and 9 because these are the same. So let's put the 7 here, the 9 here, and see what happens. All right, now remember, the last sign's negative. That means one's positive, one's negative. So to determine that, let's do the on the inner first. Let's see if these terms are in the correct order. So the outer is 18m, and the inner is 14m. And remember, the larger of these, so 18, will take that middle sign. So I need 18 to be negative, and I need 14m to be positive. And when I add them up, positive 14 and negative 18 is a negative 4. So I get a negative 4m, which is what I wanted. So right away, those terms are in the correct order. I just got to put the signs in the correct place. So if I want my inner to be a positive 14m, then I need this to be a plus symbol right here. Because a positive 7 times a positive 2m is a positive 14m. If I want my outer to be a negative 18m, then this has to be a negative right here. And there's your answer. You're done. All right, so the answer number 4 is, right here, is 2m plus 7 times 2m minus 9. And again, remember the direction set, you check the first 4. So the outer is, the first, 2m times 2m is 4m squared. The outer is negative 18m. The inner is a positive 14m. And the last is a negative 63. When I combine like terms, I get 4m squared minus 4m minus 63. And that's what you wanted. Okay? All right, let's look at number 5. Okay, number 5, you have 6x squared minus 25x plus 4. So 6x squared minus 25x plus 4. So the GCF is 1, so I'm going to go directly to 2 binomials. And again, we use a FOIL and trial and error. Okay, so for 6x squared, what times what is 6x squared? First times first is 6x squared. Well, there's several possibilities with 6x squared. There's 3x times 2x, and there's 6x times x. So a couple possibilities. Let's just try 3x and 2x first and see if that's going to work. So 3x, 2x. All right, the last sign's positive, so that's a good thing for us in terms of the signs. If the last sign's positive, it means both of these signs have to be the same, and it's going to be both negative. So right away I know this. Over here, see when it was negative, I had to do that at the end. We did that, we filled this in at the end. Here, we can fill it in at the beginning because this is positive. All right, now for 4, there's 2 times 2, 4 times 1. All right, now if I put this as 3x and 2x, that's not, if I leave it as 3x and 2x, I know I will not be able to use 2 and 2. Because if I put a 2 here, that means I can factor out a 2. You see this? That means I can factor out a 2, and you're left with x minus 1. If you factor out a 2, that means the original, the GCF is 2, and it's not. Here, remember, the GCF is 1. All right? And so that wouldn't work. So if you keep it as 3x and 2x, minus, and then let's go to the 4 and the 1. So you know the 4 won't go here. Make sure you understand this. I'm going to go ahead and write the 4 and make sure you see this. The 4 cannot go here because if I put the 4 here, then that means I can factor out a 2, which means that the original is divisible by 2, and it can't be because the GCF is 1. So that can't be right. So that means I would have to put the 4 here and the 1 there. So let's do that, see what happens. So 4 here and then 1 here. All right, now check your work. Don't say that's the answer. You gotta check your work. You gotta FOIL it out. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. So we're good so far. The last, a negative 4 times a negative 1 is a positive 4. We're good so far. Now let's do the outer and the inner. Look at the outer. The outer is a negative 3x. The inner is a negative 8x. When I add them up, I get a negative 11x, but that's not what I wanted. I want a negative 25. So what that tells me is that instead of using 3x and 2x, because I used up all possibilities here, instead of using 3x and 2x, I need to use, see that didn't work, I need to use 6x and x. So let's do that. So let's try 6x and x and see what happens. All right, now, you see how I use 6x and x? For the same reason, I'm not going to use 2 and 2, because if I put a 2 here, and don't forget it's both negative. If I put a 2 here and a 2 here, 2 here, then that means I can take out a 2, factor out a 2 from here, which meant you could have factored out a 2 from the beginning. You can't because the GCF is 1. So that wouldn't work. So instead of using, remember 6x and x. So instead of using 2 and 2, let's use 4 and 1. Now remember, from our discussion, you can't put the 4 here for the same reason. You can't put the 4 here. Because if you put the 4 here, that means you can take out a 2. So put the 4 here and the 1 here. Okay? All right, now let's check our work. 6x times x is 6x squared. The last, a negative 1 times a negative 4 is a positive 4. Now let's do the outer and the inner. We got to do that also, the outer and the inner. The outer is a negative 24x. The inner is a negative 1x. When I add them up, I get a negative 25x, and that is what you wanted. So there's your answer. So in your blank, so in the blank for number 5, you're going to put 6x minus 1, right here, 6x minus 1 times x minus 4, and you're done. Now remember, it's only 1 through 4 that asks you to do to check it. You could check this one, but I'm just going to keep it as the direction said. All right, and so that's the first page. So that's the key for the first page. I'm going to do the key for the second page in a little while.